Welcome, everyone. I'm Akash. I'm the host of Airtime Webinars. It is a bi-weekly series of discussions with research and product leaders about the nitty-gritty details of building products. And today I have the pleasure and honor to talking to Barbara Bencze about Ableton's research approach to crafting music hardware. Now, if you're not aware, Ableton is a fantastic brand and company, and it makes creative tools for music makers, both software and hardware. Barbara is a principal researcher at Ableton, and she specialized on hardware research. And she's been, so to say, the heart and soul of research activities for Move, which is Ableton's latest hardware product out on the market. Now, before we kick off technicality, I have a few technicalities to share with you. Number one, if you hear me and see us well, please leave a thumbs up in the comments. If you don't hear, put a thumbs down. Then I know there's something is wrong and I need to fix it. Second thing. If you'd like to get the latest webinar recordings, like the recording of this session, or watch past episodes, you can follow me on Spotify or YouTube. I will put these links in the comments as well in a second. Now, if you have, thanks everyone. I see a lot of thumbs up, no thumbs down, so we're good to go technically speaking. If you have second rules of the game. Second rule, if you have any questions for Barbara anytime throughout this webinar, please don't save it for the Q&A part in the very end. You can put it in the comments and I'll make sure to throw these balls in her direction at the right moment. Okay, last but not least, if you want to do a background check on Barbara or myself, I will put our LinkedIn profiles in the comments as well. You're more than welcome to reach out to any of us. If you have questions or if you want to continue the discussion that we started today. So I think I've spoken enough. You're not here for me, but you're here for Barbara. Barbara, it's my pleasure to welcome you, to see you again, this time in the ether, virtually. And I'd like to start by a little bit hearing about yourself, what you've been working on in the last years and lately.
Right. Well, thanks for the lovely intro and hello to the nice people on the internet. So I'm essentially working here as a researcher focusing on hardware, just as you mentioned. And before that, I started off as a researcher working on software products. So most commonly mobile web applications, on the phone, e-commerce environment, where people were welcome to go through a purchasing funnel. Then essentially before that, my background is in social sciences and journalism, which really just gave the foundation to systems thinking, narrative, storytelling, all these things that I very much love. Right. And then here at Ableton, in the past 5 years, I focused on Push and Move, these two hardware products that we have. And one thing to mention, that when I joined 5 years ago, I was actually not a music maker myself. So my knowledge of music theory, musical practice, everything that's music related grew throughout the time I spent here and with the products that I worked on.
Amazing. So, do you have like a record, or is there a way to follow your music making activities, or do you do it for your own pleasure and play with it at home?
Well, as I like to say, I have one track a year, more or less, so far. Those are on my SoundCloud, but yeah, no LPs, no EPs yet, but it's definitely on my vision board for myself.
That's amazing to hear that you started not just developing these products, but using these products as well and become a customer. Now we've been you mentioned Push and Move, and before we move on to the next session, I'd love you to show, do you have a Move? Do you happen to have a Move in front of you or somewhere on the table, so we can get like a visual of what we're talking about?
Indeed, I have one. And I will try to show you as much as I can by changing one camera view only. That's all I'm gonna do. So you should see my desk now, if all's
Yep.
true. Perfect. Then let's do this way. This is an Ableton Move that I'm going to open for you. As many other before me walk this path, I'm going to unbox it. Right. So it's essentially, an instrument, an electronic device that holds a bunch of built-in sounds. You can also add your own sounds and own samples, and you can record with it by using a built-in microphone. And you have all these sounds on this box that also happen to have speakers. So you can just hear what you're making, but also you have headphones connection. So in case you're in a public space, you won't disturb anyone with your bleeps and bloops. And so the promise that Move has is that it is a great way to entertain yourself if you are a more experienced music maker, someone who takes pride in knowing music technology and having really decades of experience, as well as someone who is new to music making or using Ableton products. And in fact, it was and still is my first ever instrument that I made music on. So I also feel very personal about it.
I bet. Now, you said you started at Ableton 5 years ago. So you and this product Move, it came on the shelves in October 2024. So that means you spent years researching for this product, right?
That's right. I'm gonna change my camera view back for this other question, and then whenever you find it helpful, just tell me and I can show you Move again.
I tell you, and then we go back because there's a few things that I want to do. I want to learn about that unboxing experience when you first somebody is exposed to that product. But I'd love to understand and start on the higher level of how does that look like? How did your research goals, how did your research activities evolve over time as you worked for multiple years on this product?
Yeah. So when I joined, Move was already in a prototype shape. That means that it existed more or less as it exists now. It had a form, a shape, a size. It had the screen, the knobs, the pads. It had the layout. So many decisions were already made based on thorough research that was nailing on a good mix of hardware and software features. So really just the unique value proposition of the device. What was still open at the time is how Move exactly delivers on that promise, how the different features are shown, what the UI on the screen looks like, how the screen talks to the different areas of moves, what sort of feedback they show. A button probably was decided at the time, but what happens if you press that button, what that interaction looks like, that was still a question at the time. So my work was the most helpful there, running those studies.
Can you give me a sense of how do you research what a button should do? Do you research that at all, or do you research on a different abstraction level?
Yeah, interesting question. Some of the features are actually grouped by what we understand how these workflows are used by people. So some editing workflows, for example, are represented in similar ways. Undo, delete, copy should live in a similar area, represented in similar ways, so that people understand how to navigate around those. Then an interesting factor is how you explain to people what these buttons are. Do you show them a text? Do you show them an icon? Do they understand what the icon show? That's also just building on our music makers and new users, new music makers' past experiences. I found it very exciting to think about the different icons and then how to show delete. And then all this knowledge that you have, that I have, anyone has really today, that comes in from using web applications, mobile applications, but just like remembering your own old tape recorder, what the record button looked like, and sort of building on that memory and experience. So there are many, many layers to it, really.
Yeah. Is there like a prototype means that there's like a product, there's something like an item that you can put in front of people. And I was wondering, do you do like some usability tests? And how does one, maybe just walk me through your favorite research project as you were developing Move, just to get like a sense of what it looks on like on your day to days when you research such a hardware product.
Hmm. Hmm. I understand the question. It's hard to answer and hard to say which one was my favorite. To be fair, most of the research sessions were different, partially
Hmm.
because when even just running a usability study, focusing on a feature, let's say focusing on moves navigation,
Hmm.
you would want to think about context a lot. In which situations would people use the browser, would want to go for another sound, what that means for their musical creative workflow, what's the purpose of finding another sound, what is success for finding another sound. Is it time well spent browsing, or is it time well spent on making music with your new sound?
Hmm.
So there is a lot of contextual understanding when it comes to testing any features really for music making. So for usability testing, this just means that I'm trying to give people an informed task that models one of these workflows that we are trying to optimize for. So maybe it
It's
is making music, but maybe it is finding your favorite sound.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot more preparation than in the software realm. Like, is that an accurate like assessment from my side?
Very much so, yes. Kind of like the preparation is the heavy lifting, and really the study is the joy. Sort of doing research, at least for me, yeah, for music hardware. And maybe this is different for other kinds of hardware products, as I imagine the level that, or like the preparation that needs to go into, I don't know, testing a car, consumer electronics, or a water bottle is probably different. But just here, also just to mention that when you say prototype, you kind of mean a bunch of things at the same time. One is definitely the hardware prototype. Two is, or like two entry is the firmware and the software running on it. So you all have this three components to kind of like
Yep.
match up and then come together magically to test that one experience that we just built for the sake of learning.
I I want to ask about something that as I heard you saying all these years and all the activities, there's something in research about insights that they like sometimes expire, and you know, something that I learned about a customer in 2020 before COVID, it doesn't hold any longer. And I was just wondering if on your in your research activities, have you come across this phenomenon that something that you thought you already knew about customers just was invalid a couple of years later because the market changed, because the way we make music changed, because we were stuck in our apartments for 2 years?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Also, very exciting question. Mm. Hmm. because I guess one thing that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about your question is because hardware takes longer to build than software, you have a lot more time, so to say, behind the doors before it's in front of people.
Yeah.
And the manufacturing process and the hardware engineering itself, and then the different versions of prototypes in circulations can delay certain projects or features or have just a different timeline than what software development has. And the two kind of needs to find its overlaps or their overlaps in order for research to come in at the right time and then leave and then come in again. So part of the challenge was not just the fact that insights age, but also that just to keep insights fresh and relevant, because
Yeah.
one project or one feature can be in development for 1.5 years. So the different rounds of studies need internal knowledge management, and we need to be able to refer back to what we learned once and then kind of just pick up the thread from there and then see what changed in the meantime, what changed in the product, what changed in the context, what changed in the hardware. So it's not that much of the insight aging or not being relevant anymore, but more just keeping your own process tight while all the elements are really all over the place. That's
Yeah.
one thing. The other, if we have time for a second, answer
Sure.
here.
Sure. Of course.
Um, hardwares do ideally exist for a long time after a hardware product is being released. So the initial studies, core research that goes into figuring out what unique mix of hardware and software features we need together that actually justify the existence of another product, really, or another object. That study needs to, and the findings of that needs to withstand the time, really. Like if a piano doesn't make sense after a global virus situation, then it didn't really make sense before either. That's like a very extreme example to put in, but
Yeah. I hear. But also, I guess you already had a hardware product on the market called Push. So I guess, did you use some of the learning, some of the wisdom that you gathered from that customers to craft Move, or did you start Move from completely scratch? Let's build something new here.
it's maybe harder to answer because I started to learn about both of the instruments at the same time. So I think I
Okay.
personally did not do that. But from what I understand how Move works, one of the promises of Move is that it works in an Ableton environment, which means that there are ways how it is it works similarly than the
Mhm.
Push. So ideally, if you have a Push at home and then you get a Move, you should have the least friction in figuring out what to do here.
What's it? Yeah. All right, let's jump to another angle that I'm really interested about, and I'm a layman here. Okay, so I haven't done hardware UX research in my life, so most likely my notions about it are flawed and my assumptions. So I just wanted to put this out there before I ask my questions, but I think what I'd be interested in is like when you build software. Let's stick to software for a second. And you build a feature, you can track usage, you can collect like in context feedback, you can run quick interviews, and you can fix bugs, and you can all do that within a few days. And I have this notion that when you build hardware, music hardware, then there's a risk that you get something wrong. And if you get something wrong, well, the hardware is there, and I know there's a software component to it, but the hardware is there, and you have to, like in extreme case, call it back from the market and send a new one. So I was just wondering if this sort of risk is it real? Because you've seen both hardware and software. And if there's any reality in that, how did you manage that risk of getting something wrong?
Yeah, thanks for asking this. Right. I think definitely there is a higher risk just due to the fact that there are decisions you can't change once hardware is released. Like Move has the size it has this display it has the layout it has the battery it has. So those things are just unlikely to change. In terms of managing the risk of getting something wrong, I think it comes down essentially to how complex your hardware product is and what is the space that's left for iteration, by what elements can be changed, and what is your goal really by iteration. Like, what is the successful ideal state that you are trying to achieve? And by iterating on hardware, one other thing that I'm thinking of is how, when looking at what elements can be changed, not everything should be changed from one day to another, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason is that Move exists out there, Push exists out there. So the moment when you change a certain behavior or a certain button, real time experience of people using the device, kind of building a relationship with it, practicing, up until a point where it becomes second nature to them to make music and play music on these instruments. So while you could certainly change a lot of things, there are definitely high risk elements that you wouldn't want to change from one day to another. And I
Because
think
you
that's
make many of your customers dissatisfied or angry that they already know this and they have the muscle memory for something, and because you changed it, that's gone.
yeah, you essentially would just break things partially
Yeah.
badly for people. I guess one example that comes to my mind is also Live, our main software, which is a software product, but similarly to Move and Push, it's a tool, it's an instrument. So it's there to serve the music maker's purpose and the artist really and their expression.
Yeah.
So maybe when you're, like from your question, I understood that you're referring more to a certain type of software products where you have immediate direct access to feedback, and you can also change and essentially you can control what people see from one day to another.
Yeah, that's exactly, because once, like, it's a different industry, but let's stick to cars, right? If you're a car maker and somewhere there's a fault in the mechanics of that car, then you have to recall that car from the market, and you can't solve that with software. And this is why I thought, like, this sounds like high risk. So before you like start shipping any hardware, you want to be extra careful that you really understood, like, first of all, that the hardware itself works properly, that you tested that, but also that you have a good understanding of how your future customers will use that product.
Yeah, it's actually a really good example thinking about cars, and I do think about cars a lot when I think about instruments. Yeah, there are definitely experiments and tests they run with our
Yeah.
hardware products that are beyond user research, like a drop test or making sure our batteries are safe and it's not going to burn your house down. You want to get certified components that will last long and keep everyone safe. So that's sort of beyond the work I do, but it's like quality management is a big part
Yeah.
of getting your hardware out in the real world. Mm, right. And I did have another point. We were just talking about cars and I'm
And
sorry,
then
I totally lost it.
it's okay. I have another question that I wanted to ask you, and maybe in the meantime, the point resurfaces again. So, and the point I wanted to bring, the next one, is that I had the pleasure of visiting you a couple of months ago in the Ableton office. We were in one of these studios, and you back at that time you showed me a move, and you showed me also this unboxing experience, and it got me really intrigued how for music software and for Move specifically, how did you research this first time experience when somebody opens that box, and how did you what were your goals of understanding, and what do you want to achieve with the new customer when they open that box? And feel free to switch back the camera, show us Move, show the box, but I'd love to understand this. I'm going to call it an onboarding experience because I lack a better expression.
I think most of us in the world lack a better expression, so I also call it an onboarding experience. Okay, let me find the right camera source. There we go. Yeah, so how did we research? We know from studies that when people unbox a new instrument, a new device, there is this emotionally charged, high energy excitement moment, and they just want to get started using it. And then what happens is that they face an instrument that shows lights, and there are words on the display that may not make complete sense to them just yet. There are icons that really mean nothing if you're a new user to Ableton or a new music maker altogether. So our challenge was to figure out how we can get people, no matter their past experience, to this place where they can make any sound on Move within
Hmm.
one sitting, opening or like turning the device on and then just getting to any sound feedback. That is essentially the fun part, the joy part of using an instrument. And by
Yeah.
that, we wanted to bring together three information sources. One was on whatever we show you on the display, which is, for example, prompts to update or connect to Wi-Fi, which is helpful and essential for you to have the latest experience with Move. Then
You have a
giving
little
you,
leaflet.
yes, giving you any information about how to get to your instruments and how to
Yeah.
make them sound. And then for those who have more of a background knowledge and understanding of hardware products, a quick map really to what each button is and what features are behind those buttons can be super helpful. And then essentially there is a third input which you can access through this QR code. It's a learn
Yep.
page. So more materials are available there.
So just for a second, so you have two leaflets. One of them is for like rookies like myself, and the overview is the one for pros, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can have a look at the overview. It will say words that make sense to you, like undo,
Mm.
copy, delete. But then it will also say words that probably don't make that much sense. And that's where the experience does create a divide between the people who are newer to using electronic music hardware and those who have a collection at home.
Yeah. I see.
Right. And yeah, just having this success moment of like, okay, I got how to create a new set. I understand now how to make it sound. And the moment when people see the feedback on Move, they hear a feedback. By feedback, I mean just the sound feedback.
Yeah.
It's already fun. It's already something that makes them feel better about coming back to the device the next day or the next time. And that really is our goal here, considering that this first impression really of the device is so important, especially for those who approach music with a lot of maybe expectations or hope that they can become this music maker person that they always wanted to be.
Yeah, I have a question because I find the lights really cool. Is it just random, or did you also like research in that granularity of what looks cool and appealing visually on the device?
I guess the answer is yes and yes. So there is
Not a coincidence. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of work going into, well, what is the best kind of way to show drums? What is the best kind of way to show a pad layout? The colors are random in a sense that whichever, like if you are in a new set and then you go in, you will get potentially a different set of colors every time. But the kinds of colors or the accessible, available colors on Move and on Push and in Live, those are part of a system that work across products and devices, considering as well that you can move this music and this set to another Ableton product, to Live. You can open it in Note. So colors help creating these shortcuts for certain scenes, for certain clips, certain instruments, so that well, red is always my bass or red is always my drums.
Yeah. Wow, amazing, Barbara, and thanks for giving a glimpse. And just to paraphrasing what you said, um, I believe that what you're optimized for in your research is to minimize the time to value. It's a term for software, but like how much does it take for someone? How many clicks? How many buttons do I need to push until I can get the first moment of joy, which your definition was for that, the first sound, right?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. Learning a new instrument and learning a new device is going to be work either way. No matter what your past experience with music making is, it's still a new interface that you will have to get around, get familiar with. So it's very, very essential to make people feel rewarded for that work and hours of attention they devote to our tools and instruments.
Yeah. Barbara, I have a bunch of other questions, but I'm also looking at the clock, and I see a question from Matthew, which I want to throw on the screen, and everybody else listening to us, watching us. This is a great time. If you have any questions, this is a great time to ask them. So feel free to leave them in the comments. And for now, I'm going to put Matthew's question up here. And he's saying that he's planning to transfer into, or he is actually transferring to a new hardware PM role, and he's asking about the data that you collect from these hardware devices.
Mm-hmm. If yes, could you tell me about the process there and what you've learned? And if no, whatever. Yeah. So I get it. Yeah. Thank you for asking this question, and congratulations on moving into a new role.
Amazing question.
I think it really depends on what the company practices are for collecting data. For Ableton, historically, since it's an artist device, we are making instruments for people to create their own intellectual intellectual pieces and to write their own music. Usage data is something that we take very seriously in terms of, do we collect it or not? What access do we want to have to it? So in that regard, what I can share for prototypes and hardware prototypes specifically, what worked for us is to release internally, which means that before it's out of the door at a certain release date, there are engineering runs, builds of prototypes that are released to us as people working here. So first is just maybe 30 to 50 prototypes, but then in a few months later, you get 100, and every time someone else gets it, someone else gets to have a new experience or the first time use experience, and we take good care of documenting these experiences and looking into, for that matter, bugs, but also just UX that we would like to change, would be curious to see if there is any improvement. Partly also because the needs that people have, that music makers have, come from this interaction with the device, from this dynamic between how people use it and what the device actually is. Often, although a feature or a workflow is designed a certain way, people end up using it completely differently in a personalized way. And that is not necessarily wrong. It just means that it evolved into something that we didn't know it's going to happen, but maybe we can actually support it. So there are a lot of insights and learning moments through these internal release processes.
Yeah.
So I guess in the sorry, just one more note, that while at the end it looks like Move entered the world in October last year, it actually was quite in a mature state by that time.
Yeah, and I think it's also an amazing constellation when you have so many users of your product within the company, and obviously there's some bias, no, in a research sense, because you work for a company and use that product and a customer at the same time, but nevertheless it gives us such an amazing opportunity to test, explore workflows, and just surface some of the concerns or problems that external customers may bump into.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very, very important to keep context in mind throughout all kinds of research, but also this especially when you're hearing feedback from people working here, then you're not hearing the full width or the full reach of the kinds of feedback that there is in the real world. This is one of the limitations that you kind of have to embrace when doing hardware research.
Yeah. I have a question from Karun, which is I'm gonna put up there, and actually there are two questions. And the first one is, and I let you read through in the meantime, and I'm going to read the first question out loud, is what key motivations or data points shape Ableton's intended workflow design?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think there is like one answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very complex one. Yeah. What key motivations or data points shape Ableton's intended workflow design? I think this kind of refers back to the point
I think it like paraphrase. If I can paraphrase that, it's
yeah.
how do you know what workflows people will go through that hardware? It's I think it refers to this chicken and the egg problem of how do you know how people will want to use it and what their workflows will be and what workflows this product should support when they haven't used it yet.
Yeah, I understand now. Thanks for hopping.
And that's at least how I understand it. And Karun, you can you can clarify if we're on the wrong track.
Right. Well, it's kind of this finding a balance between how much research you need to do before something is good to go as an MVP. Like your core research, the unique value proposition, what this thing should be. It should be portable. It should have a bunch of high quality sounds. It should have pads. You should be able to do sound design with it. These decisions were made based on what we understood at the time, what we need to deliver on, and then essentially the decisions to down the road will be made based on where do you think you reached a good enough state for this to go out and be valuable in the world. And then from there is still a very long time to add new features and to change how the device works. So I think it's really just finding the balance in this dynamic of when do you listen to the greatest source of feedback and up until which point do you deliver on the workflows that you wanted to deliver in the first place. It's not like I don't have a one sentence, this is what you need to do answer.
I think what I hear and what is very very valuable to know is that it's very complex, and you did and your colleagues did a lot of research into various like components of this device that are must-haves, the things that people want to accomplish with it. Carvin, you also had a second question. As a longtime user, would there be an opportunity to discuss my research with you, Barbara, in the future? I would say I put Barbara's LinkedIn link, so feel free to connect with her and just start a conversation.
Maybe adding two more options for people to share. One is we do have public beta testing groups that are there for live as well as push. And we do have a Discord channel where people can join. And we also ask questions about how they use Move, but they're also just welcome to discuss with other people on Discord. So our colleagues, I am in the Discord channel, so I'm reading it. So that's another way to interact with us.
Amazing. I will ask for these links later on after the webinar, and I'll make sure to send it to everyone in my newsletter who joined us today. I have a question from Sebastian about a coupon for Ableton Move. It's meant as it's meant as a funny comment, but I wanted to put it out here because I see that a number of people in the audience are happy Ableton users and customers.
Well, it's always good to hear about happy customers. We do have regular sales campaigns. So Ableton has a history of reducing prices at certain times of the year. That is valid to all our products. So I'm pretty sure there is going to be a time when that will be the case for Move. I personally don't have a coupon here. What I can tell you that if you do research with us, it's one of the ways how we reward people is to give them a certain percentage off in the web shop. So one other reason to do research.
And if I remember correctly, you used to have a form on your website to apply to be like a research participant,
Yes,
right?
if you open an Ableton account, you can also set it in your profile if you're interested or not. And then we have,
Yeah.
yeah, you're on our invite list practically.
Yeah. So this is actually a perfect segue to Kira's question about recruiting respondents.
Yeah.
How did you find people? And to some extent, you had to talk to people who are new to music making, right? That's one of your target groups with Move.
Yeah, well, this is definitely the heavy lifting part of doing research here. Although I am based in Berlin, and it's not, I can imagine that there are other cities in the world where it would be harder to recruit music makers. So I still feel very lucky that I get to speak to so many people in person. Yeah, we do have a community of our users who we have a long-term relationship with. These people are artists, music makers, hobby music makers, um, different types, different genres, all live users. Some of them use Push, some of them started to use Move. But for Move, essentially, especially before it was released, finding people who are just interested in getting started with music making, or maybe are part of a band and they would like to explore other types of music making, that were definitely profiles that made me think of how to find these people. So I did go through our very valuable network of colleagues and reaching out to friends and family who are possibly in Berlin or nearby and can come by for a study and fit one of these categories that we were interested in. I would say every time recruitment looks different, because if you are interested in a specific use case, or you're interested in what would high profile artists do who perform on stage once a week, that's a very different approach and requires a very different testing group than if you're just curious about what home music makers do, who, or what, how they would use a product in that 1 to 3 hours they devote to it once a week.
Yeah, yeah. Barbara, I see a few more questions in the comments. Do you have few extra minutes to
Yeah,
spare us and stay with us?
sure.
Um,
If everyone else wants to stay, I'm happy to stay. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. I have a question from James related to knowledge management.
Mm-hmm.
And James is asking, what kind of system do you use to manage your research findings as a research repository at Ableton? And how does your approach to knowledge management differ for hardware versus software? Maybe you have some experience from your previous past before
Yeah.
Ableton.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. A lot of thoughts coming to my brain at the same time. But I guess one thing to say is that, well, no magic trick there. You would have a findings document, a presentation, and you would do your best sharing that across the relevant groups, find the right people at the right time. And I personally used a lot in JHQ and storing my qualitative studies there, including the videos. That was very helpful. What we figured is essentially a lot of work manually at the time, at currently, is to make these findings accessible through departments. So I work in hardware. We have features that people who work on the live product also have, which means that it can happen that someone ran a study on a relevant feature in the live team, and then the findings of that study would be relevant to us when working on that feature in hardware, and the other way around. And this is the kind of cross management that we haven't gotten, a solution for that works for us, besides researchers talking to each other, or teams asking for asking around, or basically shopping around for insights before get started. So I guess this is my short answer. If I think about my life before I started here, and I didn't work on endless complex products, that was a bit easier in terms of finding out insights about a feature, let's say a calendar, and then you suddenly find all the insights on the calendar as a keyword when searching. So obviously that's a bit different.
Yeah. James also has a follow-up question, and he touches on something that that we also circled around a few minutes ago, is how you balance the likely business need to engage with new audiences while staying consistent with the design ethos of the ecosystem as a whole.
It's a pretty cool question. Yes. Luckily, it's not just my job, but everyone kind of tries to achieve this goal. From what I can say from the research perspective, that we had this understanding at some point that, okay, your past experience does impact how you think about music making, because maybe if you were a DJ, you will think from that corner. If you are a singer, you think along voice and song structure from the beginning until the end, and melodies, etc. And and that this past experience comes also from a place of knowledge, what you learned, what you studied, what instruments you know. So essentially, when someone without a long history of music making comes to a new product, versus someone who has a lot of experience comes to a new product, they will have different expectations in terms of how it should work, what it should do. And from the study and from the studies and from the research, we often found that actually what people need and what people want is more or less the same across these experience levels and backgrounds. Like, they want feedback, they want to know what's happening, they want to know why is that thing blinking, and why is this thing making noise, and why don't I see what's playing, and how to stop and how to delete. So there are these cornerstones and pillars of the experience that certainly should work, and that's not something that you would want to risk down the road or after release not working. So one thing to add here is actually there is more in common when it comes to solutions between these experience groups than what differentiates them. It's more about how these people go through the experience. So while a new music maker would assume that, oh, they just didn't know what to do, or like it's their fault that they didn't get it, a more experienced person would tend to say things that, oh, it's just a device, it's not working, or it's not working how I expected, it should be changed. So it's more like, where do you see your own capability matching the device? But in terms of what you want, it's pretty much the same. So I hope that's an answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see like questions are pouring in, Barbara. The more you tell us, the more wisdom you share, the more questions there are. I think it's a virtuous circle, which I'm very happy about. But I want to be conscious of the time, and I'm going to pick a last question from Ina. She hasn't had any of her questions up there, and I will promise that I will find a way for any of your unanswered questions to get to Barbara, and then for you to get an answer on them. For now, let me put Ina's question up there, and she's a UI UX designer and musical artist. And she's wondering about core research skills or specializations that she would need if she wanted to transfer into music tech.
Wow. Yeah, I think it really depends. It's kind of hard for me to answer because I had no music tech relevant experience. So if you are already a UI UX designer and a musical artist, you are in a good place to make that leap and to take that step. One addition or like one note to add is a beginner mindset will be an asset when you start working for a new product or on a new product as a researcher. So while I understand that it's most likely your hobby, your passion, this is what you like to spend your time with, um, inhibiting that beginner mindset can actually be an asset in this situation. And as a researcher, your job will be to translate insights or translate from the outside of the company or from your audiences to people who are very deep in the topic, who are very focused on one specific feature, who are experts themselves. So I just want to add that while it feels like something extra special that you have to be able to do in order to do this, very often it's just being new to something is already the key to being able to do it.
I think that's a beautiful final word and final words. Barbara, I'm so grateful for you that you came on this webinar, showed me and showed us move, walked through the onboarding process and shared just so many aspects of your experience. I'm eternally grateful. And to all the audience, you've been so active, amazing questions, and I feel really sorry that we couldn't cover everything. I promise that all the unanswered questions will find their ways to Barbara, and we'll think of a way how to get them answered. And I love them so much, so I'm also like immediately thinking of, is there another webinar? Is there some sort of a next thing that I could set up to cover them, because there's just so much depth that we haven't had the time to cover. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Barbara, again. Thank the audience and wish everyone a very nice rest of the day and all the best. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, and was very happy to participate and just chat today. Have a great evening.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely, Barbara. And by the way, to everyone still out there, there's a recording of this session. I'm gonna put it on Airtime's YouTube. Follow our channel. You can watch Barbara there. You can re-listen to her wisdom and her insights. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.